Good evening. My name is Louis Powell. It's my pleasure to come before you once again on behalf of the Cook County Bar Association, the world's oldest African American bar association, formed right here in the city of Chicago in 1914. The Cook County Bar Association's goal is to provide information that our citizens in the Chicago metropolitan area can use, and we always try to want to make it plain. We want you to please call in. The number's on the screen, 738-1060, area code 312. This is a call-in show. We want you to call in. We have a great guest, Attorney Amir Akbar, a young attorney. Attorney Akbar, how long you been practicing?
Oh, it's coming up on 5 years now.
Well, brother, you are officially a veteran.
Yeah, we're getting there.
You already there. Trust me. This brother's doing some great things. What is the name of the firm you with?
I'm with Karchmar and Lambert.
Okay, that's an excellent firm. I think that's the firm that had the Sandra Blank case.
That is down in Texas.
And you all did
Southern Texas.
You all did a marvelous job. Now again, ladies and gentlemen, it won't be any fun if just I'm here talking with Attorney Akbar. We want you to call in. Today's topic is personal injury. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and we're going to try to cover some grounds. Now, Attorney Akbar, just a little bit of background. Where did you go to school at?
DePaul.
Good school?
University.
Okay, born and raised in Chicago?
No, I've been here for a while, but I originally hail from Cleveland, Ohio.
And came to our fair city.
That's right.
Well, my brother, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Let's get into this topic. What are some of the common injuries that people sustain when in a nursing home?
In a nursing home, I mean, one of the most common injuries you see bed sores. You also see falls. You see a number of untreated medical conditions that people may have. One of the unique things about nursing home negligence in that area is that there's a different dimension because you're dealing with patients who are already suffering from some sort of injury. We're not talking about a car accident or another situation where somebody's healthy and then they become injured. You're dealing with someone who has pre-existing medical conditions that may make them more at risk to suffer injuries from negligence on behalf of a facility.
Attorney Akbar, our population is aging because people are living longer, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, sometimes people may get in a situation where they need assistance in a nursing home or assisted living, so forth and so on. And you would think when you trust your loved ones to be that type of facility that you should get the best of care. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, correct?
Well, that's correct. I mean, you have a lot of nursing homes that do a great job in caring for your loved ones, but you have other ones where they may not supervise their employees as well as they should, or they may not follow best practices for the industry, and your loved ones can be hurt as a result of that, unfortunately.
Okay. Attorney Akbar, how does a person who has suffered an injury while in the care of a nursing home hold the nursing home accountable?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes you can do it through negotiations with the nursing home. You can talk to the nursing home and personnel and reach some kind of resolution. Other times, unfortunately, it becomes necessary to pursue different measures. You have to bring a lawsuit, retain an attorney, and go through that whole litigation process in order to see justice.
Now, Attorney Akbar, again, our topic is personal injury, really technically as it relates to nursing home.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to try to keep the topic narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who can be sued? That's the bottom line. Who can be sued in case of a nursing home being negligent in terms of injury?
That's a very good question. It of course depends upon the circumstances of the case, but typically you would bring suit against the caregivers, the actual doctors and nurses that are involved with the care of a patient. You would bring suit against the nursing home, the actual facility. There may be other corporations that play a role or other companies that play a role in the care and treatment. For instance, they may outsource certain operations in the facility to different companies, and there may be a wide variety of people named in one suit.
How about in terms of, okay, we have the doctor, we have the nurse, but how about the pharmaceuticals in terms of the medicine that the senior citizen may be taking? What about that? If that's the culprit in terms of the injury.
Okay, so you're referring to if they receive some medication
Yes.
that doesn't act. Well, that would be, it would still be brought out of the same action in the nursing home as far as them giving a medicine that they shouldn't have been giving, but also you can bring suits against various pharmaceutical manufacturers if necessary, if they provide medicines that haven't been tested thoroughly or should only be used for one purpose, but they're advertised for being safe for another purpose.
Okay. In terms of personal injury, what is the general statute of limitation?
Typically, the statute of limitations is 2 years from a personal injury. That statute of limitations may be extended under certain circumstances, but 2 years is the benchmark, and you don't want to rely on the fact that you may have some grounds to extend the statute of limitations. So typically 2 years, you don't want to file suit any period of time after 2 years.
Okay, and that's the same as a regular personal injury and personal injury as it relates to nursing home, correct?
Right, right. As I mentioned, there are certain quirks sometimes in the law as far as you may have a longer statute of limitations if there's an injury that could not have been discovered and comes to light later on. But for the most part, 2 years is a solid statute.
All right. Now again, the number is 312-738-1060. 312-738-1060. Ladies and gentlemen, we want you to call. You have an experienced attorney, someone who has practiced in this area, someone who's been a part of a pretty famous case. That Sandra Bland case, in my mind, is a landmark case in terms of what's happening in terms of police brutality, so forth and so on. Would you agree?
I would. I mean, beyond us being able to bring some closure to the family by resolving things in the matter with a settlement, we were ultimately able to enact some reforms in the sheriff's department in the area, and hopefully serve as an example nationwide about some of the reforms that you can enact to prevent what happened from happening again to someone else.
Again, that was a serious case. Just to refresh our audience's memory, when did that case take place?
It was in early 2016, late 2015. I forget the exact date of the incident. It happened down south of Houston in southern Texas. Miss Bland, she was traveling on the highway. She was pulled over for it was in essence a pretextual reason. There's video footage, as you may remember, of her being dragged out of her car by a cop that was upset by the way she was answering his questions. She was taken to the local county jail, and within a week, she was found hanging in her jail cell mysteriously. And there are a number of things about that situation that sounded a lot of alarm bells in the legal community.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the gentlemen on the case. That is really a case to really draw attention to just overall just police abuse and what to do. Correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so.
Now, again, in terms of a nursing home situation, okay, who can file a lawsuit?
Now that's a really good question. Typically, there are two different avenues that you can use to file a lawsuit. The first would be if there's a death involved, you would file suit on behalf of the person, the deceased. As a close family members, you can bring a lawsuit. And then if it's not a case where there's a fatality, that person can bring the suit individually on their own behalf.
Now, what about in the case that your loved one, has passed away? Again, who can bring this the lawsuit?
So in that event, there are really two separate actions. The first action would be you would sue on behalf of the deceased individual, your father, mother, whoever it was that was deceased. And then there would be a second action called a survival action that you would basically bring on your behalf. You're still here, and this is your loved one that has been taken from you, so you're suffering these damages.
Will the estate have to be open?
It depends on the case. If there's a death, yes.
Okay. Now, Attorney Akbar, can you give our audience some tips, preceding the lawsuit, if that's possible, in terms of trying to make sure that your loved one is getting the care that they deserve?
One good practice, and I don't even know if this is a legal tip, is follow up and make sure you're keeping a close eye on your relative, whoever it is. Because it's been shown, if you're keeping vigilance, if you're keeping watch, even though they've been retained to keep watch on your relative, if you're checking up, you're visiting often, you're asking questions about your family member's care, all of these things may, and it's unfortunate that it happens, but it does, they may guarantee your family member better treatment than the person who doesn't have anybody to come visit them, anybody that asks questions about their care. So definitely being active and keeping an open line of communication can forestall there being any injury in the first place.
How about documentation, letter writing, so forth and so on, in terms of complaining, stating I was on here on such and such a day, and this is what I observed, putting them on notice that you're not pleased and that you want some corrective action?
I mean, exactly. That's in the same vein where you see a minor injury, and if it goes untreated for a long period of time, it can develop into something much worse. So you definitely want to document things and not just tell a doctor, oh, I see a small sore on my relative, my father, he has a small sore. You want to send a letter to the nursing home. This letter is to serve as documentation that there's a sore on my father that wasn't there a week ago, and I just wanted to document it. And then that way, later on, nobody will be able to claim he had the issue before he came into the facility or they didn't know about it. Because, of course, everybody's going to point fingers if it gets to litigation. Everybody's going to say that they didn't know about what happened.
Attorney Akbar, that is a critical point, because in summary what you're saying, that if you see a problem, you need to get on, as you say in the business, you need to get on paper. In other words, you need to write a letter stating date, that you observed it, because Attorney Akbar said, again, when something goes wrong, the name of the game is start pointing fingers. And if possible, something like bed sores or minor injury, so forth and so on, if you're not careful, the nursing home may try to allege that your loved one had that condition before they got there. Is that right, Attorney Akbar?
I mean, that's one of the main defenses. Of course, you're dealing usually with people who have some sort of physical infirmity, some condition, and they're going to always tie it in many cases, and tie it back and say, well, this person was sick already, and that condition is the cause of their injuries, as opposed to them being mistreated or neglected.
Okay, very good point. Ladies and gentlemen, please call us. Okay, we hear, the theme, the mission of the Cook County Bar Association is to be here for you. And the number is 312-738-1060. Our number is as follows. This is the Cook County Bar's number in terms of our legal referral term, Attorney Akbar, as you know. And part of the process is, in order for our attorneys, African American attorneys, to be able to make it, is that we need African American, we need people all races, but specifically we need our own people to be supportive of our African American attorneys. So again, the number is 312-630-1157. It's on the screen, extension 21. This is the Cook County Bar Legal Referral Program. Please, and we're all in this together. In order for attorneys to make it, engineers to make it, accountants to make it, so forth and so on, we need to use our own people. Now, in terms of the type of lawsuits, Attorney Akbar, what are the different lawsuits that can be brought against a nursing home?
You mean as far as what you're alleging?
Yes.
Well, the first area, you're always going to allege negligence. And basically negligence in essence is that the hospital had a duty to perform a certain task or refrain from doing something, and they violated that duty. They had a duty, let's say with the case of a bed sore, the medical standard of care requires them to turn the patient every 6 hours, and they failed to do that. They turn the patient once every 2 days, or whatever the case may be. You want to establish that they had a duty and they failed in that duty. That's the basis of most nursing home action.
Okay. How about contract action?
Contract is an action that I guess you could bring in a nursing home case as far as if they have an agreement for you to take care of your relative and provide a certain level of care. But much of that is duplicative of a negligence suit.
Okay. Statutory, again, this may be overlapping with our previous conversation in terms of when you had the time frame to bring a lawsuit.
Right. And statutory, I mean, how statutes come into play, and that's a good question and a good tie-in, as they go into negligence. Whereas negligence says you have a duty to do A, B, and C, the statutes inform that. So when I'm alleging this nursing home, they failed in their duties, I can say they failed in their duties because the statute says that they have to. It's not optional. They have to do A, and they failed to do it. So statutes can be a powerful source of establishing a negligence case.
In terms, going back into the medicine, so forth and so on, will products liability come into play?
It can. As you mentioned earlier, if there's a case where in the course of a patient's treatment, let's say a medical device fails, let's say a patient is being injected with something and you have a broken syringe. In that case, the hospital will say, yes, we used the syringe correctly, but it failed. Mm-hmm. It's the manufacturer of that syringe's fault. And you see cases like that too. You may have a case where it's both situations. You may have a defective piece of equipment, and you may have a physician that used the equipment incorrectly, and that contributed to the device's failure. So,
now, Attorney Akbar, again, staying in the same vein, in terms of the product liability, in terms of the medicine, in terms of the medical apparatus, would that fall into medical malpractice, or is that still personal injury?
That, I mean, it would be. It would be malpractice if they used it incorrectly, a certain piece of equipment, and the standard of care of a doctor, required of a doctor, indicates that they're supposed to use it in this manner. It's definitely a medical malpractice suit.
Okay. And I mean, as you know, 'cause this year medical malpractice is very sophisticated.
It can be,
Very,
sure.
very sophisticated. You know, something that you really need an attorney as counsel right here. His firm, you know, somebody that's qualified, someone that knows how to get the record, so forth and so on, and someone who knows how to get the case to trial. Is that right?
That's correct.
Because it's not a cakewalk. Just because you hurt, everybody gets hurt. But you need a qualified attorney or attorneys to know what they're doing in terms, again, getting the proper documentation, paying attention to the time frame in terms of when to file a lawsuit, and knowing how to bring the lawsuit if necessary for trial. Because a lot of these cases settle. Is that right, Attorney Akbar?
Yeah, and that's one thing that people may not know. I think we have a caller. Did you want to take
Yes.
that, or-
Thank you. Caller, are you there?
Yes, and good evening, gentlemen, and thanks for taking the call. I got a quick question. These nursing homes, what is the difference with the nursing homes that continuously get ticketed by OSHA, and they also be having a lot of negligence, and they just steady open? Can you tell me the difference of that, and why something is not being done more?
Attorney Akbar?
I mean, that's a good question, as you see, and that arises in the case of a lawsuit. One thing that you may allege is if you get a nursing home that has had 5, 6, 7, 8 complaints, that will come into play in a lawsuit. As far as us saying, wait a minute, you're a facility and you constantly violate your duty of care, and you've done it, and you have a history of doing it. That's something that comes into play. As to why nursing homes like that are allowed to still operate, one issue is just economics and just it's political. There aren't enough nursing homes, so that, you know, in the medical field, that's a problem with hospitals too. There may not be enough facilities, period. So the state authorities may not want to act as aggressively as they would in other scenarios. Nursing homes, I mean, they're heavily regulated, and there aren't that many of them, really, when you consider the number of people who need care. And it's unfortunate, but that's one thing I think that's considered that plays a role in whether or not they're shut down based upon a series of violations.
That was a good question.
Yeah, it was an excellent question. I
That's a good
appreciate that, sir.
Attorney Akbar, what does a nursing home have a duty to protect your loved one from predators? When I say predators, people that are other patients in the nursing home, or maybe even medical staff, beating on them, doing things, that not supposed to be doing, but you know what I mean in terms of, preying on people, in terms of predators.
Sure. And that definitely arises too. You have a case where some disgruntled employee or some employee that just, I don't know what the reason would be, where they intentionally harming patients. And the hospital has a duty to put an end to that, or observe it, or at least take some action. And if you get a situation where there's a staff member who's known for being abusive to patients, eventually it's going to go back to the hospital. If there's one isolated situation where it's completely unexpected, maybe the hospital will have a defense. But if there's a pattern of conduct where you have a situation where there's a patient that has an injury that no one investigates or reports or says anything about, that leads to the hospital liability, or the nursing home's liability potentially.
In terms of domestic violence between patients, in terms of, could you speak on that, in terms of liability factor?
And that would be a similar analysis. I mean, if there's a one-time incident between a dispute between two patients or two residents of a nursing home, that's a different matter than if you have a resident who's violent, who has a history of being violent towards other residents, and they don't do anything about it.
That's a critical piece. So what you're saying, Attorney Akbar, if I understand it, if a resident has been reprimanded or is documented that he or she has used physical violence against another resident, and that person is still allowed to still keep doing what they're doing, that could lead to liability factor being increased.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Attorney Akbar, what about the relief? Okay, we have a caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Your question, please.
I would like to know if you're in a nursing home and you're on 24 hours oxygen and you send yourself out to go home and you die on the way home. Is that a case?
You, so you're saying that you're required to have oxygen at all times, and then on the way home, you're sent home without any oxygen?
Caller?
Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to make sure I understand your question completely.
Okay.
Oh, we lost him, I think.
We lost him.
Okay.
To the extent you can, Attorney Akbar, take the scenario and see what you can do with it.
Well, I mean, in that situation, you have to ask yourself, did the hospital, first off, are they responsible for its transportation? And that goes back to the earlier question about whether or not there's a third party who can be accountable. It may be a situation where the hospital has nothing to do with transporting the patient. It's a private company that has no relationship with the hospital, in which case the hospital might rightly be able to say, you know, we played no role in transporting this patient. It may be a situation to where they know about it and they have a role, in which case you would have to ask. It always goes back to what's the standard and did they meet that standard? And if the standard is you have to give the patient oxygen 24 hours a day and you send him home without oxygen, knowing that he's going to be in a transport van without oxygen available, you have to think that there may be liability.
That's a serious question. Attorney Akbar, we're going to try to get in as much as we can. In terms of the monetary damages, is it possible, can you speak on recovering, if possible, recovering the monies that you have spent for the care of your loved one, as well as explain to the audience punitive damages and compensatory damages, if you can?
So in a typical personal injury suit, you can recover compensatory damages, which is money to compensate you for medical bills, pain and suffering, and loss of normal life. In this action, if you have a case where you're paying a nursing home, or if the state is paying a nursing home, in many cases it's Medicare or Medicaid, the state may even go after the nursing home. If they're not treating the patients properly, the state may seek to recover some of the funds that were supposed to be used on treating a patient. With regards to punitive damages are typically only available in the most egregious of cases. So in a normal case where, let's say if there's a staff member that doesn't do something they're supposed to do, they forget, they're not paying attention, maybe that won't rise to the level of punitive damages. But if you have a situation where the hospital or the nursing home is aware that something is going on and they turn their head to it, and it happens again and again and again to the point where they show that they just don't care, not that they made a mistake, but that they just don't care about what happened, what we call a reckless disregard, that's when you get to the level where punitive damages can be assessed.
In terms of policy changes, we know, Attorney Akbar, the good thing about the law is that sometimes the law will set you straight. And if it's the right type of case, as the case that your firm was involved in, it forces the industry or it forces people in public policy, i.e. the local municipal governments, to make some changes. Can you speak on that briefly?
Well, sure. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, nursing homes are heavily regulated as far as there are a number of different things that they have to comply with in order to get licensed and to stay licensed. And in a lawsuit, sometimes it's difficult to ask an organization to change its policies after the fact. And a lot of times the policies aren't the problem, it's the execution. But that's one thing that has happened in the past, with there being landmark cases against nursing homes. And then lawmakers deciding that it's time to add some regulatory changes to govern their future behavior.
Okay. In the time that we have left, which is approximately 2 minutes, Attorney Akbar, can you address in terms of how to retain an attorney in terms of nursing home, personal injury, and the type of fee arrangements?
So the standard fee arrangement in personal injury ranges from 30 to 40%, and that's a contingent fee arrangement. So what that means is that an attorney agrees to take your case, and in exchange, once that case settles or goes to trial and goes to verdict, the attorney gets paid a flat fee of what you ultimately recover. And what that does is that allows attorneys to take cases where you have plaintiffs that don't have any money. So basically, it allows it to be justice for everyone.
Very good. Attorney Akbar, again, it's been a pleasure. You're a source of information. Your firm is one of the leading firms in the city in terms of this area, and also regarding civil rights as well. We may need to bring you back and talk about some civil rights. I know that's another passion of yours.
Sure.
But again, we really appreciate what you're doing. And in the time that you've been an attorney, you've really been a standard bearer, and we really appreciate you. We wanted you to just keep doing what you're doing, and don't stop. Stay active with the Cook County Bar. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back again the same time, same station next week. God bless you.